Persepolis, a film based on the graphic novel of the same name by Marjane Satrapi, beautifully engages with the issue of censorship on every possible level. Based on her childhood while growing up during and after the Iranian Revolution, Marjane wrestles with a culture of strict, fundamentalist Islam through the story itself, the film's design, and even with the film's interaction with the real world. To set the stage, we need to understand the history that we're looking at. Essentially, after World War I, oil was discovered in Iran, and Britain wanted to control that oil. So the British helped establish Reza Shah as dictator in 1921. Reza Shah worked to modernize Iran, but his harsh policies turned the clergy against him. Soon into World War II, Reza Shah abdicated the throne and turned it over to his son, Mohammad Reza Shah. He was a significantly harsher dictator than his father, abolishing Iran's political parties, enforcing strict censorship, and torturing political prisoners. This sparked the Iranian Revolution of 1979, with the people largely protesting political oppression and economic inequality. Part of what's interesting about this is that both Shahs did a lot to modernize Iran during their reigns. The money from the oil industry allowed for huge advancements in infrastructure and education. The middle class grew tremendously during Mohammad Reza Shah's reign, although it left many other Iranians behind. This aggressive modernization made many Iranians feel like Western ideals and Americanism were being forced on them, like their own culture was being swept under the rug and being replaced by something they didn't necessarily want. This can be seen as a sort of censorship of traditions. This isn't the perspective of Marjane's family, but those were the sort of sentiments that helped fuel the eventual fundamentalist takeover. The Shah left Iran in 1979 and eventually found refuge in the US. The subsequent government turned Iran into an Islamic republic, with Ayatollah Khomeini as the supreme leader. Iran had a president, legislature, and everything else that counted towards a republic, but the supreme leader could overturn any decisions made by them in the name of God. The subsequent ban of all things Western after the fundamentalists came into power encouraged an underground culture of what the clergy would find anti-Islam. Alcohol, Western media, certain clothes, and all other sorts of things were actively banned. However, the most damning contraband were Western ideals. Similar to the Shah's rule, anyone who spoke out politically against the Republic was arrested and/or executed. Though this film was made in France, it draws heavily from the traditions of Iranian cinema and Third World cinema as a whole. Persepolis' primary goal is to show Iran from a personal level, and not the frightening, tyrannical picture that the West has painted. Persepolis doesn't shy away from how brutal the revolution, war, and subsequent world were, and it makes stern political statements through Marjane about freedoms of self-expression. Marjane's uncle was a political prisoner for being a communist, her parents participated in the revolution, and Margie herself is quick to speak for the people's rights.
Yes?
You say that our veils are too short, that our pants are indecent, that we wear makeup, etc., etc. As an art student, most of my time is spent in the workshop. In order to draw, I need to be able to move freely. A longer headscarf would make it all the more difficult.
There's also a certain self-reflexivity exemplified in moments like Marjane's Renaissance when she sings Eye of the Tiger directly into the camera. In terms of animation style, Persepolis takes a very minimalist approach. This is a common thread in Third World cinema as well, but Satrapi specifically chose animation, and specifically a planar style, so that anyone could relate to the story.
It's exactly also why we made an animation movie and we didn't make, a real action movie, with people with meat and blood and all of that. Because as soon as you put, the action in a certain geographical place, with certain type of people, etc., then again that will become the story of these people that are far from us, we cannot relate to them, they are not like us. It's something very abstract, in the drawing.
This can be read as a sort of self-censorship, especially with the black and white coloring, which is ironic because seeing things in black and white usually means that the message is clear. But in this case, there are details hidden by the lack of color and cartoony style. There are also details that are specifically omitted in order to make the film's message appeal to a wider audience.
When you see on the background, we didn't make anything exotic, on the background. It can be Tehran, but it can be Cincinnati, it can be any big city anywhere.
The best example of the interplay of these techniques is a scene where teenage Margie is looking to buy some contraband cassettes. She goes to the park wearing a Western-style jacket and sneakers and negotiates with a man for an Iron Maiden cassette. Suddenly, two black figures ominously glide in. Two women wearing chador swoop in and start berating Margie for being too punk. The animation here is interesting because of how inhuman the two women look. They arch in unnatural ways, limbs completely hidden while they surround Margie like harpies. Soon they grab her to turn her into the morality police. Their hands are the only discernible part of the women, representing the oppressive hold their ideology has over Margie. Margie's own veil blends into the blackness of their clothes, which is a powerful visual statement about how the very veil that Margie wears is an extension of these women's beliefs. After some sputtering, the women lose interest in Margie, the violins dying as they walk away at her totally fake sob story. Though censorship is a huge theme in the real-world events and in the film when looked at separately, the way that Persepolis interacted with the real world only drove home the film's message. It was denounced by the Iranian government, though limited screenings with some scenes censored for sexual content were allowed in Tehran in 2008. The film was also dropped from the 2007 Bangkok International Film Festival after the Iranian embassy contacted officials. The festival's statement was, "It is a good movie in artistic terms, but we have to consider other issues that might arise here." Persepolis was outright banned in Lebanon for being offensive to Iran and Islam, but it was soon unbanned after outcry from intellectual circles. The feat of Persepolis is all the more impressive since Marjane Satrapi managed to tell a real, human story from a place with so much censorship. She's quick to insist that this movie isn't a political one, but because the subject matter is so inherently political, it does work to fight against closed-mindedness, even if it isn't intentional. She's constantly fought against oppressors in every facet of her life, including the production of her graphic novels and this subsequent film. Her family's taboo, liberal ideology, her artistic expression, and her fierce independence survived against a society that consistently tried to silence her.